Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? That good? How we doing? Good? Yeah. Good first day at Avalanche House. Thank you all for showing up bright and early at 10 after 1. Just wanted to come on and make a bit of an announcement, but first, anybody familiar with BENQI? Yeah, listen to that. Anybody else? Good? What about liquid staking on BENQI right now? Yeah? 2, 3, 4? Okay, so what we want to talk about today, and I've got some friends that are going to come up in a couple of minutes and chat more about this, but we're really excited. Rome Blockchain Labs has partnered with Alluvial to bring institutional liquid staking to Avalanche. What that means and why that's important, we're going to talk about in more detail. But if you're not familiar with liquid staking, the ethos behind liquid staking is we want to contribute to the security and the decentralization of the network, of course, but want to give investors the opportunity to use the representative tokens in other parts of DeFi and still have access to their equity and their liquidity. And one of the biggest obstacles, I guess, to larger adoption of liquid staking has been, KYC, AML requirements, some of the institutional stuff that is required for larger participants and enterprise to also participate in the ecosystem. So we're really excited today to announce a partnership with Alluvial. And that's going to bring a very structured, kind of global access to institutional liquid staking on Avalanche. Very excited. Hopefully that gets everybody fired up here, maybe as much as I am. But yeah, there we go. Obviously, listen, look at this. Everybody's still sleeping. But I'm losing my voice, so I apologize already for being nice and quick about this whole thing. But we have 3 great partners and great friends that are going to come up and chat with us about this, about the size of the market, what we're expecting, rollout plans, why Alluvial, and what the technology means for the ecosystem and crypto in general. So I'm not sure if Nahas, you coming back up, or should I just introduce the guys? So I've got 3 partners coming up today. We've got Clay from Figment. And Mr. Evan from Coinbase Cloud. And last, but definitely not least, Mike from Alluvial. All right, just one final thought. There's a press release that's going out, I think, right now. So if you have any questions or you want to read up a little bit more on the partnership, what it means, how it's going to work, you'll probably see it all over Telegram, all over Twitter, and wherever else you find crypto news. So take a look, share, reshare, would be appreciative of that. Anyways, so to kick it off, I'm going to ask Mike a quick question. He's one of the co-founders of Alluvial. And so for those of you who have not heard of Alluvial, hopefully Mike can take a second to explain to us and kind of walk us through how Alluvial came about. Why did you guys decide to build Alluvial, and kind of what's the ethos behind the product?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Thanks, JD. So Alluvial is building an enterprise-grade liquid staking standard, and that is multi-chain. Institutions just require a higher bar in order to participate in the digital asset ecosystem. And so to what JD was saying, what does that namely mean? That means compliance and security, just a higher bar. And so the project started with my 2 co-founders, Nico and Matt, at Kiln and Figment, respectively, trying to create this institutional favorable standard. And realizing along the way, talking to people like Evan at Coinbase, the types of problems that institutions are running into, and kind of coming to this point that it's better to do this as a decentralized organization, in one that is very focused on collaborating with other top-notch players in the industry. Right? And so that was kind of the birth of Alluvial. My background, I'm actually from, most recently, the Index Cooperative, which is more of an Ethereum, Polygon-based project right now, and I was running institutional business there. Same thought process. Institutions have a higher bar, so I'm kind of used to that. It's the same argument here. And so this is how the protocol works. There are 3 main ways to participate. You can be a validator, and so the bar to be a validator is very high, and we're working with top-notch validators, Figment and Coinbase Cloud, on day 1. There are integrators, and so these are entities that service institutions. They do the KYC step that makes us different from the more crypto-native protocols that are already doing liquid staking, like BENQI. And then finally, there are the tech providers. And this is where Rome Blockchain Labs comes in. So rather than try and take all of this on ourselves, the best way to extend this protocol and to do it in the most collaborative way possible is to actually go to the best, go to the experts that understand this network cold as a way to extend our API beyond our initial Ethereum implementation. We're working with teams to extend into Polkadot and now into Avalanche. This is a little background on how we came to be.
Beautiful. So obviously, one of the things that is really critical with institutional liquid staking on Avalanche is the fact that we can take deposits on the C chain and then move from the C chain through the X chain to the P chain, which is where the assets, of course, are staked. Really important here for the institutional piece of this, because most of the major centralized institutions are connected to the C chain, but not necessarily the X or the P chain for this activity. So this makes it a little bit unique on Avalanche, but the technology already exists, and we're really excited to expand that, of course, to this type of application. I'm going to move to Evan now a little bit. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the appetite for institutional liquid staking, kind of what you guys are seeing at Coinbase Cloud, and why, obviously, it was really important to start to integrate with Alluvial and further partners.
Yeah, I would say over the past, year, we've just had more and more interest in liquid staking. It tends to be a more flexible product, providing flexibility for institutions, but also just end users. And we've seen that with the success of BENQI on Avalanche and things like Lido and Ethereum. And so as we were starting to think through our position of how do we bring liquid staking to our customers, we knew that there were key concerns that we had to address. And at Bison Trails, which has transitioned into Coinbase Cloud, we built the world's largest staking platform, and a lot of our success really focused on our security posture. In the early days, we went to large exchanges, custodians. We had things like pen tests, SOC compliance, that really helped us set a bar and win a lot of that business. And so as we were starting to think about that, of how do we use that skill set, but do it in a way that is a decentralized way and also can partner with other collaborators in the ecosystem, we thought about, let's do this in a way that is Web3 native. And so we've been working with Figment and the founders of Alluvial to really try to build this enterprise-focused, security-focused protocol with the best teams and technology providers who have that security focus, but also the leading validators like Figment, who can really tell a story of, hey, come work with Alluvial. You can do all your staking in one place, which is a key concern for a lot of these exchanges, custodians. They don't want to manage 10 different vendors, and so come work with us. We're a collaborative group that has really that focus on enterprise and security.
Beautiful. So I guess, what does this mean for Avalanche? Why is this? Why are we so excited about this? Why is this something that is one of the major focuses for Rome Blockchain Labs at the moment? And really, it comes down to kind of that. At least our thesis is one of the next big inflection points for the space is bringing in more and more institutional participation, and obviously validating a network, keeping things more and more secure and more decentralized over time, incredibly important. There's a lot of demand, as Evan was talking about, and we'll release some more statistics and a lot of propaganda around this over the coming weeks, I guess, so people can start to see what this is all about. But I think it's a really important inflection point in that institutions want to find ways to participate, but currently the bar is unfortunately too low, especially for something as fundamental as staking and delegating and validating on these networks, Avalanche in particular. So looking at institutional demand, obviously we have some expectations and different things that we hope to hit over the coming years. But just objectively, if you think about the amount of institutional demand that can and will exist as a consequence of this, it's very exciting. One of the important pieces here, though, is that it is still going to remain as decentralized as possible. And that was critical through the partnership discussions and the technology integration, was to maintain decentralization as much as we possibly could. Obviously, while providing a product that is accessible to institutions via KYC, AML, and certain infrastructure pieces that Alluvial and partners like Coinbase and Figment are going to provide. We really want to create that opportunity for institutions to participate, and this is one of the best ways to do so. Speaking of technologies and different types of integration, and more specifically the validator networks, what brought you guys, Figment, to the table here, and how do you view security and participation from validator sets in this product?
Yeah, I mean, The difference between proof of work and proof of stake is obviously it's not people running hardware necessarily that are securing the network. It's like people all in this room who hold AVAX and stake it. I mean, if no one here is like holding AVAX, then this isn't your house. Maybe you should buy some. But like we sit at like the third step from as a token holder. Like you have to buy the token at somewhere. You have to custody it, whether it's self-custody or through a custodian, and then you work with someone like us or another validator to stake it. And the more tokens that get staked means that the network actually becomes more secure. So like, what we really want to focus on is removing that barrier to entry once you own the token on any network that we support. And so I think the interesting thing about what Rome is doing is that most of the activity on Avalanche right now is on the C chain. And now and most custodians support the C chain, and they don't necessarily support the P chain right now. And so now we can create a system to where you get the liquid token, which is great, but every single custodian already supports that particular point where most of these assets are being custodied anyway. So removing that barrier will ultimately see more validators on the network, more AVAX being staked, and ultimately delivering a more secure network over time, which is like attractive for us.
So when looking at different partners, I'm going to go back to you, Mike. When looking at different partners and different networks, what was some of the criteria that you guys are looking for? Obviously, building an institutional grade product has some larger requirements, I think, from many different perspectives. What was some of the factors that you guys look at, not just on Avalanche, of course, but across all of the networks that you're building partnerships?
Yeah, I would say pain points on the unbonding time. I would say, an existing solution already doing liquid staking was important. The size of the network was also important, and so that's where we're starting. But the other side of it is that we're going to continue to expand onto other networks over the coming years. But it was important to start with a network like Ethereum and Avalanche and Polkadot.
I think telling that security story, it's really important to be able to look at who has a track record of excellence. And obviously, the Rome team does, and we've seen all the success on BENQI. And so I think as we tell that security story to enterprises and institutions around, hey, this is a great way to stake, you provide more flexibility, and we've got some of the best teams that have track records of a year plus producing hundreds of $1 million of security. I think that's a really important part of that story.
I also think I think everyone here envisions like a multi-chain future, and even within Avalanche, like that's like at the baseline of the value proposition of the network. But you don't want that experience to become more and more confusing as more and more chains launch. There's different network architecture that exists for different ways to optimize certain transactions or use cases for blockchain technology in general. But then when you start talking about 100 or 1,000 different proof of stake networks, it gets to a point of complexity to where people just don't give a shit anymore. And so when you're talking about having Alluvial kind of setting a standard of we have done the due diligence. This is the same service that we're providing on all these other blockchains that you're interested in, then it kind of removes the barrier to entry as well, just from agreeing to the fact that this is a safe and secure place to start staking assets.
And one of the really attractive pieces about liquid staking on Avalanche, of course, is the fact that we don't have to do excessively long bonding. We don't have to lock up tokens for very long. It makes the market dynamics of the liquid staking token relative to other tokens of the ecosystem relatively constant. We're really excited about that, and one of the reasons that Avalanche is going to be one of the early blockchains launched with Alluvial for this product is there's a big demand for that from an institutional level. That they can still participate in liquid staking, they can participate in validation or security of the network, but they don't have to worry about a lot of the interesting dynamics that we're seeing, even with ETH2 staking right now, and what happened when the market took a bit of a dip, if anybody's paying attention to that. that was a bit of a pain point for a lot of people, and there was some concern, I think, over how the liquid staking tokens would respond. Avalanche is a little bit more predictable. We're really excited about that. And it's also creating a lot of excitement around institutional partners. They can participate. The risk is significantly lower than many other networks. And I think we're going to see a lot of exciting demand fairly early on. I know we can't share specific partnerships or some of the big announcements that are coming pretty quick, but from an integrator standpoint, how do you see kind of this evolving? What types of partners, so to speak, will Alluvial partner with, and by extension, the liquid staking product on Avalanche? What types of partnerships can we look for? How can users and institutions expect that to look if they want to participate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to participate, like I said earlier. So I think one of the groups that we're talking to a lot today are the custodians and the exchanges who, like a Coinbase, they have assets on their platform that aren't being staked because it's not in a liquid fashion. And as we're having those conversations, one of the things that keeps coming up is the engineering lift in order to offer something like this, offer liquid staking in general. And to Clay's point, those problems compound as you think about offering it on multiple networks. So the fact that we're doing this in this API-first approach with the best teams in liquid staking on those networks allows a custodian to very quickly, much more quickly than building it internally, offer this service to their end users. So there's a whole effort with speaking to all of the top custodians. We've been speaking, of course, with great tech provider teams, potential tech provider teams, and over time we'll also be increasing our validator set. So those three roles will just continue to expand. I mean, liquidity is also super important, so we'll be working with market makers as well. So you just hitting a lot of different places in the ecosystem. DeFi, I mean, I think one of the benefits of this that we haven't touched on is that KYC is going to happen, but similar to USDC, similar to Wrap Bitcoin, it happens through the custodian at mint and redeem. And what that means is these receipt tokens can be utilized in DeFi, can be utilized in the ecosystem, and they're free to travel. And that makes it, it gives it the opportunity to just pervade the entire digital asset ecosystem.
Yeah, and I'll just say, on the integrator side, we've talked a lot about institutional and custodian, but this is also what we believe is like a traditional retail product as well. A lot of these major exchanges, they have incredibly high bars for security around who they'll partner with, what kind of vendors they'll work with, and we think that there's an opportunity here, similar to the success we've had, is bring them an option of liquid staking across every major chain. So expect to see institutions, but also normal people that are just participating directly in the network and now making it easier for them to have these second order effects of participating in DeFi, and I think that's going to be a huge unlock for the industry.
So over the next few months, one of the big activities, I think, for both parties here, Alluvial and Rome, is to work on early integrations on the DeFi side. Where can the liquid representative tokens actually be used beyond just staking itself? And so that's a big piece. Any partner projects in the audience, anybody that wants to reach out to us, please do, to start laying the groundwork for some of this. In terms of actual launch of the product itself, we're aiming for a Q4, Q1 product launch. Alluvial's doing the Ethereum launch first, and then it'll be a fairly fast follow with Avalanche and other networks. So we're really excited to roll that out. We've got a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Not all at once, though. Yeah, go ahead. In the hat, yeah.
I would say...
We'll just repeat the question first, just so everybody can hear. So his question was, with institutions coming in, essentially what you're suggesting is that it creates kind of excessively large participants in the ecosystem, both from a validator perspective and from a depositor perspective. And your question is, how does that impact the overall network, the security of the network, and so on?
I would say outside of getting in the weeds on consensus design specifically to Avalanche, like just applying the Nakamoto coefficient, like Avalanche is like the largest, like most decentralized network to exist right now in the space. And Ethereum's Nakamoto coefficient for proof of work right now is 2. So 2 of the largest miners need to agree to fuck up the network to break it. I think Avalanche is like in the teens or like the mid-20s right now. So if you're comparing Avalanche to the largest network that has the largest adoption, it's definitely the most decentralized. But also, like, in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at launching something like this, right, there's interest across the multi-chain of like this working with the providers that are running the infrastructure. So we have vested, like Figment, Coinbase Cloud have vested interest in like supporting all of Web3. And so it would be pretty ridiculous for us to act maliciously on Avalanche when we're doing something like this. But to your point, though, yes, I mean, there will be more stake on the network. But I don't see it as a huge concern at this point.
I think one of our goals is obviously, as Mike said, we expect to increase that active set. I think one of the things that we're going to be doing in the early days is kind of putting out some objective factors around how to join the set as a validator, right? Regular pen tests, SOC compliance, things that these enterprises care about. And so we should see that set expand pretty quickly. And what we're hoping is we're actually going to raise the bar of other validators in the ecosystem to kind of meet those security standards. And then, today a lot of stake actually happens in a centralized way around a lot of these exchanges and custodians, right? They use one staking provider. There's not a lot of transparency. And so we think there's a way to actually bring a little bit more transparency into the space by kind of having this all happen on chain in a decentralized and transparent way. But it's a great question, and something we're obviously very aware of and concerned in trying to drive towards.
And one final point on that. When these validators become trusted partners of Alluvial and on different networks, they are KYC'd, so they're known entities. I think that in and of itself raises the barrier to malicious participation, I would suggest. But it's a really good question and definitely something that is top of mind. Decentralization and security is kind of the foundational principles here, but great question. I think we're going to get booted off. Anybody else have a quick one? Nothing? Good. Well, thank you all very much for your time, and looking forward to getting this launched and out into the wild.